Switch up the perspective, tasting the drops as every river evolves. Pick up where we left off. Why would I worry? I'd rather give you my all. I'll never wanna lose your love.
Hi, this is Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. Thanks for joining me for some more MixCon videos. This time we've got a mixing masterclass with a true legend of audio and music production, a guy named Jimmy Douglas. Jimmy Douglas has been at this since literally the 1970s when he was practically a kid in the recording studio, and he has worked with some of the biggest names in classic rock and some of the biggest names in contemporary hip hop, and also everything in between. R&B and pop, just really big records. I'm going to go through some artist names in a minute, and you're going to recognize every single one of them. If you know anything about audio and music production history, you've probably heard the names of some of the guys he trained under and worked alongside early in his career. People like Tom Dowd, Jerry Wexler, Amit Ertegun. And he worked on some of the biggest records of that era. Artists like Aretha Franklin, Hall & Oates, Foreigner, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Roberta, Flack, on into the 80s, the Rolling Stones, Roxy Music, Gang of Four. But in the 90s, he started working regularly with Timberlake, major hip-hop producer. They worked on records together from Missy, Elliot, Ginuwine, Jay-Z. They worked on records with Snoop Dogg, Bjork, Justin Timberlake, and he's mixed for a whole bunch of bigs on his own too. Rob Thomas, Sean Paul, Kanye West, Ludacris, Al Green, John Legend, Duran Duran. The list goes on and on. Just absolutely thrilled to have him doing a MixCon presentation for us. He's going to be taking a remix of a track by the Dirty Projectors. Maybe you've heard of them. And he's going to remix that remix. This is going to be a really interesting presentation. He starts out cracking this mix open in Ableton and using nothing but stock plugins in Ableton to do his mixing on the initial pass. But then he's going to export everything from Ableton and work inside of Pro Tools, where he has access to even more of his tools. Tools from a whole bunch of great companies, but I'm going to shout out our sponsors for this episode. This one is free to the public thanks to Soundtoys sponsoring this MixCon Masterclass. And Jimmy, it's a great fit because he's been using their plugins for ages, and he uses a whole bunch of them later on when he opens up Pro Tools in this mix. I saw him using Phase Mistress, Filter Freak, Alter Boy, Little Plate. So I'm opening up Decapitator. Who doesn't use Decapitator? Who has Decapitator? So a whole bunch of great plugins from Soundtoys are used in here. So a big shout out and thanks to those guys. Try out anything they make for free at soundtoys.com. But this presentation is all about the way that Jimmy approaches the mix. I think there's some really fun, funny, wise moments in here. Just an absolute great presentation to look through. After this is over, if you're catching the live premiere, we're going to have a live Q&A afterwards with Jimmy. And if you're catching this many years in the future, of course, the replays of this and the Q&A are available. So big thanks to you for joining us. Big thanks to Jimmy Douglas for doing this mix. Big thanks to Dirty Projectors for letting us crack open a remix of theirs. And big thanks to Soundtoys for making this whole presentation free to the public. Check out their stuff at soundtoys.com. Thanks for joining me. Now let's turn it on over to Jimmy. Jimmy, take it away.
Hello there, fellow audio lovers, mixers, engineers, producers. Welcome to my reconstruction of a mix that I had the pleasure of doing. I thought I'd share with you guys. It's a group called Dirty Projectors, and it's a remix, actually, for their record. Producer would be Ms. Poppinz, a protege of mine. She did a great job mixing it. She just passed it to me so I could kind of just fluff over it and do some stuff. Originally in Ableton done, and there's a lot of stuff in there, so it's really hard to recreate what I did, how I did, because it's all about the moment. There's a lot of tracks. Pretty much I would just go over what I heard, and I would just kind of tickle a couple of things. I'll let you see a couple of things, but it's really difficult to go back in time and be back where I was when I felt what I felt and sounded what I sounded. The name of the song is Lose Your Love. And it's a remix, like I said. So let's start and let's have a peek at this session, which is got a lot of stuff in there, a lot of MIDI, a little bit of audio, which would be from the vocal side. Since it's a dance record, let's start with the main chorus. Gotta be the kick. So here we go. That famous kick. Let's look at this kick while we're here and see what's going on. Very simple. A little bit of EQ. I believe the EQ was a little bit flatter in the 100. I think I boosted it up, but I can't say for sure because when you work on somebody else's session like this, especially in like an Ableton situation, there's so many plugins available just to get a basic sound that you're constantly just moving things. See, I'll move it up and I'll unmove it up. And it sounds right and it sounds round. So I'm going to move on to, by the way, it's the fastest mix you've ever seen done. I'm going to move on to looks like there's a lot of hi-hats here. And so let's get into those. That's not the way in the main. That's the other in-between hi-hat. Hi-hats with claps. They're all stuck in a group together. There was no reason to EQ the group because they were all making a lot of motion. On every one of these, there's like EQ delay, there's a little verb, a little compression, all the nice things we like to put in the mix. I'm not sure if I added that compressor or not. Then, of course, we have a trigger track, a must have in EDM, of course, to be able to get that side chaining thing going on. Of course, it's off when you play it. Of course.
Won't give up. Just hold on, let yourself be found.
We have some more hats. There's a lot of hats going on, a lot of hats and rides. So now we come to a second group of hi-hats that are doing another figure. And as I listen to that, I seem to hear a little bit of a woof, woof, almost like when you mic a hi-hat too close to the bell and it gives you this extra low end. So let's just have a peek at what we did. And yeah, there is a bit of that on there. So I think that I'll take the drum bus off and I'll just put some roll off on the bottom of that. I did put some roll off on the bottom of that. And you can hear it's a little bit clearer. Then we move down to the next track, which is a ride track. For me, I wouldn't spend much time on a ride track. It's just a ride track. Apparently, they put a little delay on it. Very cute. Very nice touch. This person mixed the song pretty good. And there wasn't really a lot to do except kind of trim the edges. It's almost like, a haircut in a barbershop. And it's like, you're kind of just trimming all the edges and making it nice. They kind of, great thing about EDM is usually the producers that do it know what they really are going for. And they can pretty much achieve that. Another open hi-hat. I guess hi-hats were cheap that day. No, just kidding. There's a lot of hi-hats here, and they all blend together. If I can solo them all, I'll solo them all together, and we'll get a picture of what they all sounded like together, which is how one should probably consume this. And there you go. You have three hi-hats making up one particular sound, and then I believe there's also a little clap loop that goes in the middle of that. And there's the rhythm of the song. There's kind of the guts of the song along with the basic kick. And there it is. It sounds like it came from a drum machine, but no drum machine would actually do it that well. That's why you need humans to do this stuff. So I didn't do much. I did a little bit to the kick, as you can see. And I'm just like, as I'm going down the list, I'm just kind of tickling stuff here and there. At the end of this, the surprise comes, actually. So we move on down the line, and we can see the bass. Let's listen to this bass. So that's how the bass came. It came with this, a channel strip, sort of. A lot of different stuff, EQ, bass parallel, EQ again, and I just put a compressor on the end of it just to bring it all home tighter. And now. So it's just making it poke through a little bit more so that it'll sit on top of the kick better. The two of them are poking out on the bottom. Let's solo them in the kick, which was kind of how the decision was made, actually. You have the two instruments, and together they're creating this like fluffy little cloud, and they're sitting really nice together, and even poking that EQ in and out made the compressor made a little bit of a difference.
I crossed to the unknown, tossed in an ocean.
And then once again, the percussion, there is one percussion, there's a lot of percussion. And on this one, I just added the EQ on the end of it just to get rid of some of that extra mud, as it were. I mean, I think, would it have died with or without it? No, it would have been just fine, but that was just what I was thinking. I saw it. So therefore, I kind of just put that on there. I don't think it was going to hurt anybody. I think you'll get it one way or the other. And we're moving on to a set of claps. We have claps and claps layers. And let's see what they sound like as a package. And we have the group. We have a group on the claps, which makes sense. And once again, I had put the compressor on just to kind of tighten it up. And without. You don't really hear much of a difference. That's kind of how I like to mix many times. I like to make a difference, but not one that totally changes the ball. Like, in other words, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want to kind of just oil it a little bit. That's the approach. Now I'm going 50 times faster than I did when I put this together. But I'm going somewhere with this. You'll see. Wait till the surprise. So, there's a nice tambourine. Nothing to do to a tambourine. Probably was a sampled one, probably from a loop. Sounds like it, looks like it. Everything sounds good to me. In order here, we can keep on moving on. We can move on to the next set of instruments. It's a nice little guy. Has a little auto pan on it, auto filter. Actually, this one, I remember I didn't really do anything. I remember I was admiring the sound. A lot of work was done on this, actually. So why fix what you don't need to fix if it sits in the track very nicely? And it does sit in the track very nicely. I continue to move on.
Up where we left off, why would I worry? I'd rather give you my all.
Then there's the dance piano, which is very nice. And once again, I didn't do very much to it because it's the sound, it's the heart of the record. This sound, the kick and the bass, and that little arpeggio that I just played you and the hi-hats are pretty much the record. There's not a lot more in there. So I kind of gave back what was there. And then there's a bunch more extra parts that come in. And at the end of the record, what I did was I printed a 2-track of it. And then I went over to Pro Tools. Why did I do that? Because in Pro Tools, I can use some of my outboard gear and I can actually, it's almost like mastering it in so many ways. And that's kind of what I did. And I wanted to show you when I was done doing this, because there's a lot of tracks here and it's just kind of like, it's taking me back and I really don't want to go back and mix this again. So I'm going to take you over to Pro Tools now and show you what I did next. After I printed the whole song with this particular mix.
I crossed to the unknown, tossed in it.
And I'll go to the hook.
Your phrase, my
So, before I do go on, there's one other thing I want to mention. We can talk about it later because I'm really not going to come back to this session. But there's a couple of tracks that I was trying to do something different. The first thing I did, first of all, this track, when I mixed it, was at 122. And it feels more dancey at 122. So I'm going to take it there for 1 second and play it for you.
Your phrase, I'll never wanna lose
And there,
your love. I never wanna let you down. In wilderness we won't give up. Just hold on, let yourself be found.
so if you notice, it does pep it up a little bit more and makes it feel more like a dance kind of a vibe. So what happened was the record came out very recently, and it's doing well, and it's really nice. And from this point, I would have taken the record over to the Pro Tools, and I'm going to show you what I did with that. But in the meantime, when I came back to do this reconstruction thing, I realized, and even with the band, we kind of talked about it a little bit, and it was like, people aren't going to clubs. So while it had that fast little thing on it, it's a great dance record. I was like, well, maybe you might want to do something that could be more accessible to maybe radio, where they don't really know they're listening to a dance record. So I basically slowed it down, and then I copied a couple of pieces across, a couple of parts that I was going to use for sort of a redo of the same record. And I put them here, and I kind of made them over here, and then I exported them. And now we're going to go to Pro Tools, and I'll show you what we ended up doing with this. Hey, and welcome back. Here we are in Pro Tools. Things look a little different already. So I'm going to try to give you a little information about how I mix. One of the things I'm going to start with is that mix that we were just doing in Ableton. This is the print of that particular mix without a lot of external stuff on it, the red guy here. And I'm going to run it through my Pro Tools so I can use some of my outboard gear. I have a piece called the Better Maker. It's an analog piece that I will run through to enhance the mix that I did. I have 2 modules from my Neve console that I run through for EQ and just for that sound, for just to have that analog kind of rub to it. I put a little bit of a widener on my bus, and I'll put a little, maybe perhaps Ozone 8. So the thing about my mixing, that the way that I mix, because I have HD heads that have multiple outputs, and I guess for headroom, first thing I'll mention is this session happens to be in 96K. It ended up that way. I don't know why. So when I exported this mix, I exported it at 96K, even though we're mixing at 44.1. That'll give us a little more headroom as well. So when I mix, what I do is I take the output of one of my tracks, let's turn this off, and I listen to it through.
I cross to the unknown, tossed in and crashing the home.
So right now I'm listening to the output of 15 and 16, which is the information. I think of it like a tape machine. That is my tape machine. That allows me to play back and hear and monitor. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to solo this particular track. And it's, as you see, it's not that track at all. It's actually this track up here. And here's the input, which goes through 1 and 2. There you go. Look at that. Nice, yeah? So now I'm really listening to this particular track, as evidenced by, but I'm listening to it through here. If I do this, and I do this, no difference, you see? If I go back into input, I'm listening to this track through my network of gear. Hopefully that's understandable. And I'm going in and out. I've already printed this, so we don't have to print this all day. The other thing about printing this way is it has to be linear and it has to be analog, because I'm using analog gear, so it has to be in real time. It takes a little moment. So I'm just going to show you what I've done to it so you can hear the difference. The mix raw that came from the other DAW. And then without any extra whatever, here's what it sounds like. Now, I'm going to add the Better Maker. I'm going to take away the widener on my summing. I'm going to add it. Nice. And now we're going to add the ozone. Nice. And that's what's creating that particular mix. Bypass the ozone again.
Just hold on, let yourself be found.
So subduing it a little bit, compressing it a little bit. If you notice on the output of the just for this demonstration, I actually lowered the output of the ozone a little bit because it was actually coming in a little too hot, and then you would hear it out of proportion. So that's what that mix sounds like. And then the one up top here is the one that I will send to mastering. And then they'll do their thing on top of that. And I said earlier, while this mix sounds really amazing and, really good job, kudos to Ms. Poppinz and myself. We kind of did a great collaboration on the mix that made it really pop. It's at 122, it's a little bit on the top. It's a little bit EDM dance-ish. And as, the pandemic has been going on, I'm realizing nobody's really going to clubs and you're not really hearing them on those big speakers like you do, which would enhance this type of thing. So I'm thinking for the deconstruction, I'd actually like to do a reconstruction and kind of do the mix that I would do thinking about where I think it would be going, which is the same idea. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, maybe just trim some of the hedges on the bushes. So, that being said, we're going to put this away. I think we all understand how my input-output works, and I'm going to make it inactive, just to even show that. We'll make it nice and small, put it away. And now, when I go to input, I'm going to hear, with no solo, I'm going to hear the rest of the mix. Everybody. Here's a kick. See? Now I'm mixing. Right. So, when I first imported all of these files, I made a quick rough of all the files before I did anything so I can have a reference. As I change things, I want to be able to remember where I was. It's you get very confused when you don't know where you were. The other thing is I also dropped the tempo down to 119. I just felt it wanted to be a little more relaxed. So these files, before I exported them from the other Ableton, I lowered them all to 119. So I would have to do no warping here in Pro Tools. It's already warped. So that file this is the mix, the rough mix of what came normally, which should sound like, should sound like this pretty much. So I'd like to jump into a couple of ideas and thoughts I had. The first thing I had was the kick inside of the mix is really punchy and the bass is really up front and really attacking you. So those two elements were seeming like they were driving, and then once again in loud speakers in a club, that's what you want, creates that pulse. But I was thinking if I'm listening a little lower, just kind of radio level or whatever, I think I maybe might want to calm that down a little bit. So I took the kick, and that's the kick, flat. Now I'm going to add a little EQ to it. I'm going to take away some of that mid-tick because I want it to kind of relax and lay back. So now it's round, thumpy, warm. That's what it was. This is what it is. Very nice. Very nice. Now, that being done, I'd like to take a look at the bass. So the bass sounds like this. That's the way it came. But remember, I just changed the kick. And that bass as pointy it is, it fit really lovely with the kick the way that it was. But now I've kind of muddled the kick out. I'm looking for more dimension, more space, more air, more distraction from just a simple kick, bass in your face. And, the modern EDM record, which is very mechanical and very, very focused. This is what's there. I figured I want it wider and more fun. So I decided to put Phase Mistress on there. Sound Toys Phase Mistress, which in my head I think it's like the original one. And then I put a little EQ, which would be the UAD Pultec. And let's see the difference in that as well. Without. With. Add some in the low 30s below what anybody needs, but I'm doing it anyway. Adding an extra muddle. And then, of course, on the third part, I put this extra, a third unit, which is called the mix flanger, because I wanted kind of two of them running in tandem. And now, it's giving the bass sort of a almost like an acoustic upright feel instead of being the electric tight. It's just widened it out. So it's like, so that between that and the kick, let's see what we got here. They're much more playful together. The kick has taken a back seat to the bass. Before, the kick was almighty up front. The bass was right behind it, traveling behind the kick. Now it feels like the kick is kind of supporting the bass. So it kind of feels a little more like, loose. That's what those two things do. Well, let's look at some of the other things that I did do as well. Like I said, I've added a few things just to make it more wide. But let's look at the drum package and see what's inside of here. And as you notice, there's very little plugins there. I'm kind of keeping it organic except for that kick that I changed. And on the claps I put just a teeny bit of plate. And just a little something. You can see the dry wet's not a lot. Just to make it not dry in your face. Dry in your face. Dry in your face. On both the clap tracks I did that. And then I did add this extra wet snare, as I called it. And I added that to the existing, both these snares actually did not exist in the original mix. And what they're accomplishing is they're making it more or less clappy. You know what I'm saying. See, there's that with and without it. And without it, it used to go like this. And it's adding a little thickness, a little fatness in the middle to give a little variation to it. And one set of claps, I actually put a little EQ on to poke it up. Nothing amazing, not an amazing EQ or anything, just some. And one counts. It's right there, smack in the middle. I also added something to the drums because I just kind of, if you listen to, once again, we're going to reference the original, and besides the hi-hat and the bass and the kick, there's nothing else there. And it just felt a little cold to me, a little open, a little wide. Like I said, on big speakers in the club, it will definitely bang you where it's supposed to bang you. I'm listening very kind of low right now. And so I decided to add a couple of items that I just pulled and found. I said, you know what, this will add space. One of the items I pulled in, that I put in here, was this. Just a little something to add to the. Take it away. Put it in. Once again, nothing to do on that particular sample that I imported because the sample actually already speaks for itself. There was one more sound that I put in there that went along with that. Just to kind of give you that like noisy distraction kind of hip-hop-ish flavor. I put a filter freak on that because there was a low end and a kick in it that didn't match actually. So I needed to remove that kick. So kick gone. Now the kick and the new sound together They're their own little choir in the background. They're creating a whole new dimension inside of the record. Let's see what we're talking about. Right? And we're going to do this again. And we're going to just do it. We're going to compare it to what was down in the original. A little different record, but it's not a different record, but it just feels a little different. So that's what we did over there. And then also there's a big staple of this particular record. If you notice the piano in the beginning, there's a lot of pianos. The original pianos that came with the session were one second piano and dance piano and a bridge piano. The rest of them, I actually went back to the Abletons I showed you, and I just created some other sounds with the same MIDI file just to have some different variation. So let's run up and down this piano and see what we got going on. Here's the first piano. Side chained, of course. What would an EDM record be without side chaining? A little side chaining. So that's that one. That's the main staple in that in the first version we did. And that's like what I call second piano. That's what I added. I added actually a clear acoustic piano with the same MIDI chain, as you can see. And then I took the side chain off in the opening just to take away some of the side chain motion. So together they smoothed it out a little bit. And then there's more. But wait, there's more. Take away the initial. Once again, take away the side chain. It's smoother. And then there's an organ synth, which he's still got the side chain, but it's a different texture. So there's a lot of adding of a lot of things versus processing, EQ and stuff. That first piano I didn't get to show you actually. I wanted the dance piano. I did actually add for this version because I got so many pianos I wanted it to cut through. I actually added on this dance piano, the original, the main staple, I added this EQ over here, this enhanced EQ. It's making it a little warmer, a little wider, a little thicker. It's very subtle, but there is a difference there. So those are the piano and the pads that I have kind of throughout the song. And this piano is very, very, there was a Sound Toys on it to variate it a little bit, this one. Second verse, and you can hear the wobble kind of, sort of, from a little altar boy. And I have the wet, dry, pretty much dry, a little bit of drive. But the variation is you can hear totally. Without it, with it, it adds magic. Gotta have magic in records. If it ain't fun, why are you doing it? That's what Tom Dowd would always say to me. Okay, so now we have a collection of all those things. There's also one other element that I did insert in there that was kind of helping disguise the bottom and the illusion of the bottom, which would be, I added a mini Moog off of that same MIDI patch with the side chaining, and that's underneath the bottom of that whole thing as well. Now about this Moog, let's check this out because I put this EQ on here for a reason. Let's hear without the EQ. Ah, it's kind of woofy. It's woofy at best. Without the EQ, it's very woofy. Then I put the EQ on to get rid of some of that extra bottom. We got so many parts, they're all competing. So without the vocal effects on top, you can hear it a lot clearer. With when you hear the vocal stuff, and you don't really hear it because it's kind of being obscured by this. So one of the other things for me in terms of mixing, what I mainly do, I think I just showed you an example without the those vocals in there, you could hear it clear as day, the mini Moog. But once they were in, it kind of obscured it. And to me, sound has always been an illusion. Like, that is part of the beauty of kind of mixing. You throw stuff in, it's like various like flavors, and even like cooking. It's like, oh, there's some salt. Oh, is that an onion? Oh, what is that? And the thing is, one of my problems is when I have to deconstruct it, it's kind of like I did the cooking on my own and I did it really quickly and it came out great. It's really hard to go back and get that and have that same feeling. And you're like, oh, this just needs this right here. This needs that. Why did I do it? I don't know. It just was something to do. My point being that, like, as you can see, without this one piece, it sounds totally different. So like it's the illusion of the sound that's making it all kind of melt together, or that's how I call it. I could be delusionary for all I know. The next sound, there's a little meta flanger on it. Let's just have a look at it while we're here. That's just flat, and the EQ. Nothing major, just between that and the flanger, it just gave it an extra dimension, i.e. Once again, more mysterious. And that bass and drum, they're to me, they're passing the test of time. They're just sitting there, chugging along, not too forceful, but enough to just be the backbone of the record. There's a bunch of hi-hats, which we saw in the other session. Actually, I'm not repeating them. These are the stems for those. The open hi-hat, little decapitator, just to make it take some of that bright sheen off, which was great in the EDM version, but not for me. So it's kind of taking off, giving a little drive in there for a little distortion. So it feels like, more hip-hoppy organic. And once again, my favorite mid-range. I don't know why. I use this thing because I guess it's there and it's very simple and it reminds me more of old school rack EQs. So that's what you're getting out of the two of them. He's hiding behind him. And together, nice package. A little percussion. There's a lot going on. This is the heart of the EDM, and I've managed to actually go in and just kind of make them the background now. And I showed you the other features that I think that I've brought forward. There's a bass bridge, which I'll play because I liked how this sounded. I went overboard, I think, on this one. The bridge. Phase, well, that's him and the Phase Mistress. And then I call the garble guy. One other item in this particular thing would be that this, which we heard in the other version. I tried to put a panner on it, the pan man, but it's already panning from the other DAW. So just kind of leave it alone. It's elusively just going out, around, swirling. It's doing a great job. Just hold on, let yourself be found. Your phrase, Now this little guy is cute. And what I did to enhance him, was once again the Phase Mistress. It just, somehow it's just, this guy is offering me the freedom to make the mix just kind of feel more elusive and more free, so to speak. And let's see without it. Not a lot. Just because you have something, you don't have to use it to death, but it's definitely doing its thing. It's modulating. Now, there is one other thing that was already in the other mix, actually. And I'm using him later, using more of him. Even with the piano that came with the original mix, I'm using more of him to make it be more of an event. There's one other item in here, which is the pad from the other mix. Side change, just like the piano part. Together, it feels like a festive bunch of flowers being thrown around and everybody just dancing and having a good time. Which takes us down to the vocal. And what I did that's interesting on the vocal is there's the background vocals, I'll take them out. And when you get to do a remix, pretty much the vocals have already been ganged together for you, and there's not a lot you can do. But we did on the other DAW, we put a little effects and a little EQ, but we're kind of keeping it dry. What I did was this particular vocal, though it's not being tuned, I'm running it through the Melodyne, and I didn't actually change anything. I just ran it through the Melodyne because I believe that, once again, call me crazy, but it seems to me when I run things through Melodyne, it adds a kind of a softness and a little color that I actually desire, because without it, well, here, you can hear for your own self. You can be the judge.
Just hold on, let yourself be found.
So, I haven't actually tuned anything. This is just the way that it interpreted it. And I haven't actually gone in and moved any notes and haven't done anything. But I'm going to play the difference between bypassing it and not bypassing it.
Just hold on, let yourself be found.
See that?
Your phrase, my word to the limit. Your phrase, my word, how we're living. Now I know I need you with me.
It may be my imagination, but I think it sounds a little rounder and a little thicker, and I like it. And a little warmer. And also on this particular vocal, sending a little bit of reverb to a Valhalla plate. Not a lot, just a little. I'm using obviously full mix level because I'm doing it through an aux. In case anybody else wanted to share the aux, then it's available for them. So this is the lead vocal, which we...
I know I need you with me. I'll never lose you.
And for that little part, there was it was created by a little altar boy, and then I actually printed it to this place over here. I actually printed it over here, just cause. And so that's what that vocal sounds like. And
I'll never wanna lose your love. I never want in wilderness. Yourself be found.
and then there's of course the bird drop, which there's a lot of really cool sounds in this record. Just enough, not too much to get you crazy, but and on that we put a little CLA 76, just to tickle it, that's a lot. There's that, and now we're going to put the backgrounds in and see what they're talking about. Well, there's the pan man that's on these little effects that are they're moving around throughout the record. Soundtoys is the pan man. It's a great box. I love panners. I'd marry a panner if I could. And we'll get back to the background vocals, which we haven't been there yet. Here we go. So I left these totally dry because the blend between Felicia, me, and Kristen are really, it's really tight, and it's really I left it kind of organically there. As you can see, it's mainly levels that I've worked on for that, and if you look at Felicia's vocal, you mainly see it's mainly levels that I worked. That's kind of where I did my work. Without using a limiter or something, I can allow myself to kind of make things move up and down without having artificial processing to change tones.
I'd rather give you my all.
Woo!
I never wanna lose.
There was a little leakage in the headphones. A little leakage in the headphones.
Why would I worry? I'd rather give you my all.
Ooh, leakage, boys and girls. But as you can see, I've just been moving all the different...
Just hold on, let yourself be found. Your phrase, my word to the limit. Your phrase, my word, how we're living. Now I know I need you with me. I'll never lose your love.
And there. I think we've done the whole record. I think we have. I think we've reconstructed the deconstructed. And let's see what we kind of have. I'll get out of the way and let a little bit of it play for you. Forgot about the opening, which I created on the other mix, which was... sorry to interrupt. Before we go on, I want you to hear the difference between the better maker and not. So you can, once again, decide for yourself.
I crossed to the unknown, tossed in an ocean, crashing the home of the host. I lost like
Without?
a newborn, lost in the rainstorm, and buried my bones like a ghost.
With?
I never wanna lose your love.
Out?
I never wanna let you down.
With?
In wilderness we won't give up.
It opens it right up. So I'm going to just live with that. I don't really need the ozone this time. I don't think I need that this time for this particular mix because I built it this way. So once again, let me get out of the way, and if there's time, we'll let it play, and you guys can decide.
Your phrase, my word to the limit. Your phrase, my word, how we're living. Now I know I need you with me. I'll never lose your love. I crossed to the unknown, tossed in an ocean, crashing the home of the host. I lost like a newborn, lost in the rainstorm, and buried my bones like a ghost. I'll never wanna lose your love. I never wanna let you down. In wilderness we won't give up. Just hold on, let yourself be found. Switch up the perspective, tasting the drops as every river evolves. Pick up where we left off. Why would I worry? I'd rather give you my all. I never wanna lose your love. I never wanna let you down. In wilderness we won't give up. Just hold on, let yourself be found. Your phrase, my word to the limit.
And there you have a reconstruction of a deconstruction of a mix. And it's more like the mellow version. And I hope that everybody was able to get something valuable out of that. I actually like this mix a lot, actually. I'm surprised it came out so cool. Because the other one was fire in the beginning. It's really hard when something's really good to make changes for the sake of making changes and not ruin what was there. So now this is more like an alternate kind of a mix, which is great. Thank you very much for tuning in. And any questions, please feel free to ask. Oh, actually, this is a group called Dirty Projectors. David Longstrength is the Dirty Projectors actually originator. And the vocalist is Felicia Douglas. And the other band members and vocalists in this case here are Maya Friedman and Crystal Slip and Mike Johnson. That makes up the Dirty Projectors. I thank them very much for this record. It's a great record. Go check out the original. Go see some remixes. Actually, I did a remix of my own on it as well. I chose this one because I like, this one's just solid. And thank you very much for your time. Bye.
All right, another killer MixCon Mixing Masterclass down, this time with Jimmy Douglas, true living legend of music and audio production. Thrilled to have him on. Big thanks to Dirty Projectors for letting us crack open a remix of one of their tracks for this project. Big thanks to Sound Toys for sponsoring this presentation, making it free to the public. You want to try out some of those fun Sound Toys plugins he was using? Things like the Altar Boy, things like the Decapitator, the Phase Mistress. What else did he use on there? I saw Filter Freak on there, a whole bunch of stuff, a little plate. Check them out at soundtoys.com where you can try out anything they make for free. The whole Sound Toys 5 bundle, totally worth it. So big thanks to those guys. Big thanks to Jimmy. The big thanks to you. And also, if you want to ask Jimmy some questions, we're doing a live Q&A right now. If you're catching this video live, the initial premiere of it, we're following this with a live Q&A with Jimmy right here on the SonicScoop YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss any other great videos like this one. And check us out, SonicScoop.com, and check out on the channel right now, live Q&A stream with Jimmy Douglas. You can ask your questions right there. This has been Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. If you've enjoyed this and you want even more, check out the MixCon playlist. We'll link to that in the comments down below. You can find tons more MixCon videos, some of which have been watched hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of times. If you want to catch us direct on the web, SonicScoop.com. If you want more with me, we've got some free workshops like the 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers, where we try to find all the common threads between all of the great mixers we've interviewed and had on for masterclasses here at SonicScoop. You can get that at sonicscoop.com/mixhabits. That's sonicscoop.com/mixhabits for the workshop free, the 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers. Big thanks again to Jimmy Douglas, Dirty Projectors and Sound Toys. Big thanks to you for hanging out with me. This has been Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. See you next time.